Welcome everyone to the third session in our AEC Leadership Conference. My name is Nancy Greenwald, and I am the Executive Director of the Construction Institute. I want to welcome all of you, and I would like to take a moment to say some thanks. So first of all, this is session 3, and we're very pleased to have some colleagues from Procore who will be talking about the future of collaboration in construction. More on that in a moment. Many thanks are due to our sponsors. Thank you to Whiting Turner, E2 Structural Engineers, Demio Construction, AP Construction Company, Viking Construction, Antonazi Associates, Busson O'Neill. Thank you also to our collaborating sponsors. We're very grateful to have other organizations that support our work as we support theirs. So thank you to ABC Connecticut, AIA Connecticut, the Connecticut Concrete Promotion Council, the Connecticut Ready Mix Concrete Association, Construction Users Roundtable, SMPS Connecticut, and High Profile. We have wonderful annual sponsors for our programs: Milo Tango, Interstate Electrical Services, IMTL, Tucker Mechanical, and Pratt & Whitney. We have a wonderful planning committee for this program that puts together these incredible sessions: Jim Cecil, Caitlin Doberful, Mike Ailes, Tiffany Cartier, and Tony Messina. Thank you all for your work on this. And then a reminder, our next session is also virtual. That'll be on Monday, November 13th, same time. Finally, we have AIA credits and CCM recertification points for this program. If you need those accreditations, please contact admin@construction.org.
Again, Nancy, thank you. Before we start, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Construction Institute and the AEC Leadership Conference Steering Committee that Nancy just introduced, thank you for registering and attending today's virtual session, The Future of Collaboration in Construction, Technology Transforming Traditional Ways of Working. This is virtual session number 2 of the 2023 AEC Leadership Conference. Just a quick, brief description of today's 90-minute session. Technology has transformed the way work gets done across industries. In construction, many large companies have already gone through an initial technology transformation by leveraging software to move from paper to digital documents and processes. However, there is still significant fragmentation across construction stakeholders when it comes to collaborating to get work done. Procore team members Aaron Kettle and Kristen Riley will share their perspectives regarding key trends for how companies are improving the ways they collaborate on construction projects, the challenges these teams face, and how technology can help address those challenges. They will be sharing their 3 to 5 year vision for collaborative construction technology and how you can start preparing your organization for that change. Briefly about our speakers, Aaron Kettle began his journey on construction sites as a heavy equipment operator and steel fabricator before transitioning into architecture. Earning an MBA in design strategy, he has dedicated the past decade to designing software for IBM and Expedia Group and is now head of design strategy at Procore. Aaron passionately guides teams to drive innovations in construction, empowering the people in construction to make safer, more informed decisions through artificial intelligence and predictive tools. Kristen Riley is a director at Procore Technologies and has spent over a decade working in technology at companies like Adobe and Amazon. With a background in operations, lean principles, and industrial engineering, Kristen joined Procore 3 years ago and is passionate about helping companies improve their processes and drive greater efficiency and quality using technology. She manages a team at Procore that is focused on improving collaboration in construction with an emphasis on communication and driving awareness across project teams and across companies of important updates and work to be done. Aaron and Kristen, at this point, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for that great introduction. I think, Aaron, you're going to share the slides. Yeah, we're just really excited to be here. And I want to thank the Construction Institute for the opportunity that has been granted to us to get in front of you all for the next hour, hour and a half, and really share our perspectives on what we've learned about collaboration in construction. It's a topic that both Aaron and I are very passionate about and have had the opportunity to work, back and forth at Procore on our future vision in learnings. So I think Michael already did the introductions. So I think, Aaron, anything else you want to add here?
So, Kristen and I are both, first, thank you so much for having us. And Kristen and I are very passionate about this topic. And we spend a lot of time at Procore thinking about and discussing how we can improve collaboration across our Procore product suite and just to help improve the lives of everyone in construction. That's part of our mission at Procore. And I particularly lead the design team, so a lot of the visionary future thinking around where the product is going, and I work closely with Kristen, and so yeah, hopefully this talk will be informative to you and helpful. We tried to make it very practical, but also future-facing and inspiring. So we'll be going through 4 main sections today. The first section is digging into the current industry challenges, and we'll share some data that can help paint a picture around the current state of the construction industry and where it's going. And then we'll talk about culture change and adoption, which we believe is a critical topic to discuss when talking about collaboration. And then we'll dive into technology and collaboration trends. And hopefully this is where you could get some very practical use cases and applications, practical tools to use in your everyday life. And then we'll dive into some of the future, looking at where collaboration is going and some of the emergent technologies that are driving the future of collaboration. So, I think it's important to just set the scene that, construction is inherently collaborative, or at least it should be. There's, hundreds of different trades that are critical to the success of any project, and it requires collaboration across, the field and the office. And at Procore, and obviously this talk isn't about Procore, but it's important to state that our mission at Procore is to connect everyone in construction on a global platform. And that's why we're passionate about this topic. So let's dive into the industry challenges. All right, so the industry is facing a lot of headwinds right now. We're seeing a major challenge around labor shortages. There's just a need for more skilled labor on the job site. And every project we hear about supply chain issues. There's constant delays, and as soon as project breaks ground, contractors are needing to order supply for a year out to make sure that they have what they need. And there's also a growing need for more health and safety. 55% of workers believe that they need more access to safety and mental health training. And then there are all kinds of sustainability challenges that we're faced with. And 40% of all global CO2 emissions come from the built environment. So these are compounding some of the challenges that you're facing to effectively run your job sites. And the industry is playing defense. And we see a lot of inefficiency happening on job sites that result in over $500 billion in rework, causing project delays, projects going over budget, and increased risk on the project. There's also a lack of predictability. So 35% of time is wasted with less accurate forecasts, cost overruns, margin erosions, and lower profits. There's also a lot of siloed data and communication. And so 81% of organizations feel they are not confident in the accuracy of available data on the project. There's also capacity constraints. So 75% of projects are delayed due to talent shortages and supply chain issues. There are also just disconnected ways of working that are holding your team back. You know, there's so many different trades and there's just so many opportunities for communication to be missed if we don't have the right processes and policies in place. So 35% of time is wasted on conflict resolution, poor communication, rework, and cost overruns. And there's also just a lot of disconnected workflows. So whether it's between the people in the field and the office, or connecting the different using different systems and tools, what's important is making sure that everyone has access to the right information that's updated in real time, so that everyone can make the right decisions and both communicate and collaborate effectively. So also, there are many catalysts driving adoption of technology in the construction industry. And as the speed and complexity of buildings increase, companies are looking for technology to aid collaboration and communication across team members and provide real-time consolidated project visibility. And poor communication and 2-week delays in receiving information are not acceptable in a fast-moving, complex world. The labor shortage is similarly driving the need to improve efficiency and productivity, which means companies are looking for technology to streamline workflows and provide a single source of accurate data so they can build right the first time. And finally, the widespread use of mobile devices in the field is an incredible enabler, allowing information to be shared with the field and project data capture in real time. So by capturing data directly in the field, it's more accurate and more timely, enabling real-time project visibility. So one big problem is that few companies are realizing these benefits or the expected value from their technology investment. Now, just like, let's shift gears and look at some of the macro trends. So we see that construction spend is continuing to grow at a rapid pace. And this is great for all of us because that means there's more funding for projects, but it's also contributing to the labor shortages and the supply issues. And also, we're seeing a shift in the mix of project types that our customers have across the industry. So in the past year, there's been a really big shift or uptick in manufacturing project types, as well as new multifamily. And there's been a dip in commercial projects. And you might have seen this in your own project mix where you're starting to change the types of projects that you're working on. And this results in different processes, different policies, different guidelines to enable your team to be successful. So not sure if you're experiencing this, but the assumption from this is that every company is adapting and modifying their processes to keep up with the evolving trends of the industry. And an important topic that impacts collaboration is change management. And I love this quote. It's by Tom Jodet. He's a former field engineer at Turner, and he's now an employee at Procore. And he said that construction without change is manufacturing. And that's obvious, but we all know every project is unique and often unpredictable. So that means you have to be prepared for the unexpected. So when you think of an issue arising in the field, these are AI generated images, by the way, so they may look a little bit funky, but when issues arise on your job sites, how do you respond? How does your team respond? And what is the plan of action? Do you have guidelines and policies in place to be able to manage change, because this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is where all the cost issues arise when we're not prepared and ready to address change when it happens. And so a framework to kind of think about the process of change is looking at this change curve. And so what we have is, on the left, the vertical axis is the scale of disruption, and on the bottom is time. And so, when an issue arises, it can stop the job site. It can cause everything to come to a halt. And so people are immediately impacted. And then it's your job to manage the change and to assess the impact. So you need accurate data to understand what happened and the scale of the impact so that you could properly assess it. And then you need to discuss what happened. So you may need to pull in different experts or different people across the job site to understand what happened and caused the issue. And then you have to take that information and you have to make a decision off of that. And then sometimes that could cause plans to change. So then, there's different processes to update plans, and that could take a significant amount of time. And then once plans are updated, then those plans need to be communicated to all stakeholders involved. And then eventually the issue is managed. And so if there are many points where if we don't have the right processes in place, this could drastically increase the amount of time that it takes to resolve an issue, which can cause further delays in the project. So now I'll hand it off to Kristen to talk about culture change.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. And I think one of the reasons that I am so excited right now is because oftentimes in industries, challenges are really the catalyst that drive big change that really propels things forward in a different way, over the next decade or two. So in many ways, the challenges that you all are facing and we see our customers facing, I really believe are going to make for a much better, more productive industry going forward. And also one where, people are happy and people feel productive. I think that's the one thing that often gets missed. And one reason why before we talk about the technology, we want to talk about the people and the culture change, because without that, you cannot make that technological, transformation. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. So Michael kind of mentioned this early, but I actually started my career in the manufacturing industry. And I love Aaron's quote, because construction is different than manufacturing. But one thing I really took away from my time there is just the importance of culture when you're trying to drive change. This adoption of technology is going to require one of the biggest changes that a lot of construction teams are really ever going to make. But it's really challenging. And we see this at Procore as we're going to implement new technology, because, we have a platform, we have tools, we have capabilities, but unless we have that strong buy-in and culture from the leadership, top down and bottoms up, it's really hard for teams to succeed. So a lot of the challenges we're seeing are, people buy technology, leaders might say, hey, I want to make this investment, but they don't understand the value and the importance of having a strong culture. And part of this goes down to trust and transparency between teams. When you are driving digital transformation and you are trying to shift people to use digital tools and follow standard processes, there is a sense of fear, right? People may feel like, gosh, I'm now, I've got to put this in a form. I'm doing this online. You're tracking my work. And it's really important that people feel like this is not, a weapon that is coming out to manage them. Rather, it is a tool that is going to help them do their job better with higher quality and make them as an individual and as a team much more successful. Another challenge we often see is that technology gets rolled out without the buy-in from the local teams. And I'm going to get into how to kind of get that buy-in in a little bit. But it's really, really important to get that buy-in when you start to hand things over the wall and say, hey, we're rolling out this new technology. We're rolling out this new process. Here's the training. Go take the webinar and do it. That is typically not a recipe for success. So you've got to go beyond training when you're rolling out technology. Go to the next slide, Erin. This is why, when we're talking to our customers and when we're helping them adopt technology, there's 3 areas that we're focused on. And the first is, and I think this is a great framework, because the first is really people. And one word I want to highlight is empowerment. You need to have teams that truly feel they're empowered to do their job and feel like they understand and are part of the vision. I think we can all relate. I can even relate to areas in my own life where we're kind of told to do something by the top down and we don't understand why. And it's the moments when we don't understand why where we're much less successful. So people is foundational, then comes the process, and then comes the performance. You can go to the next slide, Erin. And again, it requires, a parallel track, both on the technical and the people side. So, during the times in my career when I led change management efforts, there was a distinct kind of motion on the people side as well as the technical side. So, of course, on the technical, you are designing the new systems, the new processes, you're developing those and rolling them out and delivering them. But on the people side, there's a lot of things you can do to gain that buy-in. So a good example is when I was in ops, and I see this with some of our customers as well. We did things like we celebrated wins. We highlighted people out in the field or out in operations that were really being successful with the technology and helping, become change agents. We also encouraged people who are embracing the new technology and also highlighting improvements for how we can do things better, right? So simple things like idea boards, right? If you're rolling out a new technology on the site, make sure that you're putting something up there also to say, hey, how is this working for you and how could we do this better? No process should be something that is stagnant forever. Really, it's a first step towards continuous improvement, and getting this buy-in in parallel to rolling out that technology is really, really critical if you want to get to that point on the right-hand side of that chart, which is kind of driving results for the organization and for the business. Next slide, Erin. And one thing that we wanted to mention, I know that you all had kind of a deeper dive presentation on I think it was on integrated project delivery. So we don't want to spend too much time on that, but we do want to highlight that, there's culture that you can drive within your organization, but project delivery methods also set the relationship for that tone up front. And this is, when we talk about project delivery methods, it's really the structure, the contractual agreement between all of the parties that are working on a construction project. We're seeing shifts towards more collaborative ways of working, and that's really fueling the need for some of this collaborative technology. So Erin's just going to spend, a brief amount of time touching on the project delivery method piece, because I think it's important as y'all are in your work, you're going to be hearing more and more about this.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, you all are probably more knowledgeable than we are on this topic, but we're just going to cover it at a high level. So obviously there's design, build, which is the traditional method that most projects operate in. And, this is a very linear process, and there's no overlap in the design and construction phase, which is actually a topic I want to kind of press into. And then there's design build, which is it's becoming much more common, where teams work under a single contract with the project owner to provide designs and construction services. And there's one entity, one contract, and one unified flow of work from initial concept through completion. And this really helps streamline a lot of the operations when it's all under one roof. But that's not the reality. Is there's more stakeholders involved, and integrated project delivery is this contractual. It's a fully integrated project. It's a contractual agreement between the stakeholders, the participants, that that allows them to share the risk of the project. And the pros of this is a full integration of the owner with the design and build team members, and they really share in the financial wins. This is where the real benefit comes in, but it really relies on the stakeholders to work together effectively and to rely on each other. So I want to just briefly touch on, this is a highly simplified view of the owner, architect, and builder, but the owner is responsible for defining the project requirements and budget, and the architect is responsible for criticizing the design and building efficiency, and the builder is responsible for criticizing the means and methods. And so when these three stakeholders come together, it's really important for them to build a foundation of trust and to rely on each other for their roles and responsibilities to be successful. And so in this relationship, one really important concept that I'm sure you're all very aware of is just starting as early as possible in the process and collaborating early on. There's an important concept around design assist, which is where it's become a more progressive or more common lately with between architects and builders, where the architect and builder come together at the very beginning, where the architect can quickly create concept designs and schematic designs, and then work with the contractor to validate those designs and modify and adjust early on so that they could bring it back to the owner and make sure that they're aligning with the owner. And this process really helps work out a lot of the kinks in the designs early on. And
I think one thing we're also seeing is, we have kind of purview over all different phases of construction, but the use of technology does not start when you break ground, right? We're seeing more and more customers and more companies kind of move that adoption of technology earlier on in the pre-construction phase, right? They're looking at 3D models, they're doing clash detection, they're identifying these issues that you might encounter when you build. They're identifying those issues much, much earlier on. And at that point, you haven't built anything yet. So you can work across parties and you can make adjustments. It's just on paper and you can drive change. When you start to get farther and farther along in the construction process, and especially, hopefully kind of when you get to the end and you're looking at punch, it's a small change, but that's when things get costly and that's when delays happen. So, I think you're going to see a lot more companies, even if they're not doing IPD, even if they're not, they're just doing design build, like, how do we identify problems earlier? That means you need to have things digitized. Everyone needs to have access to the plans. You need a way to resolve problems even before you hit the ground. So.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, great points.
I love this chart. I love this graph. So that's why I had to chime in.
It's
one of my favorites.
And the right side there is obviously exaggerated, but it is accurate in terms of the further down, if the change happens further down in the course of construction, the cost, we see incredible cost impacts when changes arise. And we'll get into some of the technology around ways to mitigate change and to catch issues early on in the process. So, and And so this is a quote from Nate Hudson. He's an AIA member, and he's an architect at Form Gray Studio. And he said, no two buildings are the same, so they require creative problem solving to adapt to constant change. And that's what designers do well. Architects and builders can exist better if design and construction fields are more tightly woven. And this is where IPD is an easy pitch to the owner, because it's so much easier to control the budget. And there's so much unpredictability today that it's impossible to estimate the project without working closely with the GC. And controlling the budget helps start the engagement with the builder early on. And Nate also said, to foster good partnerships, a lot of it has to do with trust. Trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. I love that quote. Trust in coordination is so important, and the architect has to give respect to the GC and vice versa. It's important to recognize when we work together, the result is much better, and both parties come to the table in a very innovative way to solve the problem. Then they can approach one another because they trust and respect each other. And it builds dividends in the future when we focus on building trust. So also in IPD, there's obviously, we mentioned a contract that binds the architect and builder, and no one is beholden to the other. So both are responsible for a successful outcome. Which means like both the penalties are equally saddled between the architect and builder, and but the main pro is if the two work together and end up saving money on the project, then any additional revenue is equally split between the architect and builder. Kristen, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So I think that, the reason we wanted to spend some time going through that is you all work in different roles, and sometimes you're not the determinant of the project delivery method, but it is trending to be more collaborative. And you can see that moving from the left to the right, where design, bid, build is becoming a smaller portion of construction, which means things are becoming less linear and things are becoming more collaborative up front. So you can go to the next slide, Aaron. I'm going to be diving into the actual technology in a few minutes here, but I just want to circle back to this culture piece and highlight that along with culture comes really being thoughtful about a plan to roll out new technology on your projects and on your site. So to me, I see culture as the center of that, and you've got to have those kind of two lines where you've got the technology plan and you're also being very thoughtful about culture. I think even having a group of people or team members who are part of, whether it's a digital transformation culture committee or whatnot, but people that are specifically tasked with thinking about that is a really important counterbalance to the technology. But I want to cover just a couple thoughts on how you roll things out, how you start, how you kind of keep stakeholders involved, roll out, and then measuring and maintaining that change. So you could go to the next slide, Aaron. Before you start, I think it's really important not to just lean into the technology solution. At the end of the day, we are improving a process. We are making people's lives at work better. And so where we see success is companies that not ask themselves, how do I use this technology, but start with the process, right? Where is there a problem in my existing process as I'm building things out? It could be something out in the field, like, hey, we're not closing out all of our, punch is not getting closed out on time. Or we've got a bunch of observations that we should have closed out, and boy, now we're in the punch phase and they're still sitting here. So what is that problem and why does it matter? And what is the business case for you all and for your team members to invest time in solving that? I think it's also important when you're starting somewhere with technology to have key objectives. And I actually will walk through an example of punch in a little bit. It's also good to dive in and understand your current process. There's There's I used to do a lot of what's called value stream mapping, right? Where you kind of map out each phase of that, and you kind of look at the areas where there's waste or where there's employee pain or where there's problems. And I think this is a really valuable phase to bring in stakeholders and people actually doing the work, because then they can empathize with why you're driving the change. And then you need to have a vision for what that future state looks like. And then you get into, okay, here's what we want to do. And here is how technology can actually help us do that. So technology is an aid that's going to help you improve your process. It is not the end all be all solution. It is part of the solution. Next slide, Erin. This is where I see teams spending a lot of time, and it's really on rollout and training. And this phase is really, really critical. And there's 4 things I wanted to call out here. You really need to make sure when you're rolling out technology that you have a sponsor at the executive level. You have someone who is bought in and willing to champion the work that you're doing and give you the time and space to make these changes, because it doesn't come for free. People need to invest time in the training, in the learning of the new technology, in putting measures in place, and that's all really important. Having a clear rollout approach is also really critical. As is starting small. We recommend, once you identify that process that you want to fix and you identify that problem, start with a pilot. Start with a pilot on one small team, get a group of people involved, and build success and build momentum. Once you have that pilot and once you have that momentum, you can start building out standard operating procedures. And we have a lot of new customers within Procore. As we work with them to improve their processes with new technology, this is exactly what they do. They start in a pilot site and they say, you know what, now we are going to spend our time building out these operating procedures and rolling out globally across our teams. But they only do that after they've proven success. And you also need support, right? When teams run into challenges, they need someone to reach out to and say, this is not working, and you need to make that support pretty clear. Next slide, Erin. And then last, measurement is really important, because you're going to spend a lot of time rolling this out, changing your processes. And if you don't have ways to track and measure the impact and quantify that for your teams, they start to lose faith of, why are we doing this? So really important to measure, make sure success is clear. And then there's other things you can do to encourage adoption, right? Reward people doing a great job. Have recurring meetings to make sure you're having discussion about the change. I mentioned earlier, a board where people can provide continuous improvement ideas. That's really important. And then support and training plans. People need to feel like you're on their side and you're helping enable them with this new technology. So, again, this rollout phase is super important, and you really need to be thoughtful when you're introducing process change and technology. So with that, let's move into the technology. This is a bit of a tricky topic because every company is at a different phase. So, and I could probably talk in depth for hours on the technology side. So this is just a taste of what we're seeing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, kind of some buckets where we see a lot of construction companies benefiting from technology, and a couple tips on what we see them doing. But Erin showed a slide earlier about the fragmentation across all of these different personas in construction. And part of what technology can do is, if you develop the right processes, it can be the glue that really helps bring these teams together throughout the construction process. So that's really, our goal. This is just a quick change order to kind of budget resolution issue. But technology aids you to draw these lines between these parties throughout the process. And there's really an evolution of where we see companies going. The first is really just, hey, we've got a bunch of paper documents. We're looking at plans out in the field. We've got paper plans out in the field. I think most companies have started to, or have kind of made this shift to pen to paper to digital. But the first step is really making sure that important information that your stakeholders need to do their jobs across GCs, subs, architect, making sure that information is accessible and available so everyone has access to the latest information. And that in and of itself is huge. You know, we just introduced some new communication functionality in our Procore app. And the simple act of being able to easily share a document with someone right from the document repository via, you know, a message in real time in our app. It sounds really simple because a lot of us are at our desks and we do it every day, but it is, I don't want to say transformational, but small things like that make a big difference. Once you have everything digitized and once you have it organized, then you can kind of move to that next phase of saying, okay, where can we improve our process? And you can start to build standard workflows that connect those dots across all parties to drive to some outcome. So a good example is, you know, a submittal workflow, right? You're kind of in the materials procurement phase. And how do you make sure that you have all that done in time before that material is needed on the site and before you need to start building? The best way to do that is start to create a standardized process and then use technology to aid those workflows. And then I'm not going to talk too much about this because this is really Aaron's world. Once you have all that in place, you can start to take advantage, or your teams can start to take advantage of AI, machine learning, small ways that help them do their job better and enable them to spend more time on problem solving and places that, you know, where they really want to be when they're at work and doing their job. I want to talk a little bit about how, you know, this relates to being data driven and how it relates to where we see the industry going. This is a bit of a call it a techie slide, but I'll kind of generalize it to say, you know, the first step for all of us in, you know, in our jobs and even in construction, the first step to being able to take advantage of where we're headed with technology and data is that first step that I mentioned to you, where we've got to have the data in one place. And that's kind of on the left of, you've got raw data, clean data, standard reports, right? Organization and just getting your content onto a platform, whether it be Microsoft, right? Whether it be Procore, whether it be Autodesk. Starting there is the first step. And once you do that and you have awareness and your team members have aware of the data and information that's out there, and then you standardize it, you can start to get to a place where you're going to be able to take advantage of what's coming in the future. Things like what is the next best action, right? Suggestions, automated suggestions that are going to help you do your job. But you kind of have to start way ahead of the curve to end up being able to take advantage of the capabilities that are coming. So next slide, Aaron. So some themes that we see are companies are working on improving their communication. They're looking at how they can better synchronize their activities to drive improved coordination and make sure they're staying on schedule. They're standardizing certain processes to make sure that they're repeatable and driving measurable results. And then there are cases where they're starting to automate those processes. So there's a wide spectrum, you know, between standardization and automation. But once you get to automation, you can really start to drive more consistent outcomes because the process is essentially running itself and taking a lot of the mental load out of the team members. So a couple tips on communication, and you know, this is an area where I spend quite a bit of my time. What we see in construction today is a lot of communication is handled via phone calls. There's emails that are going out there. There's text messaging. Text messaging is used a ton, especially out in the field. And the challenge that this creates is, you know, when you're on a large project and you're doing a ton of work and you're digging back through text messages to find out, oh my gosh, I texted this person on this date and I've got a phone number in here and I don't know who it is. Communication is extremely fragmented today. And for those of us that are in the office, many of us have already moved in this direction, but we're also starting to see project teams and field teams move to a more integrated form of communication. Now, this can be challenging because they're there can be legal concerns like, oh, I don't, if you're a subcontractor, maybe you have fear, right? And this is where the trust comes in that Aaron mentioned. This is a tool to help us better do our jobs. So many of us have access to Teams. Maybe you have access to we probably have access to WhatsApp, right? In Procore, we're building something that we're calling Procore Conversations. But a common theme we see is construction companies are starting to set rules about how communication is going to happen up front. Some of them are specifying that as part of the contract, right? Like if you are going to reply to an item or communicate with me, here's the best practice way to do it. We're seeing a lot of companies start to create groups, whether it be in WhatsApp, whether it be in Procore, whether it be in another tool for their field teams, so that they can effectively communicate announcements and communicate changes that are happening in the field. We're all on, many of foremen, soups have mobile phones. So this gives them quick access to things that are happening and updates that they need to know. And then a lot of products that are out there enable you to have communication and commenting in technology associated with some of these form-based and workflow processes. So a lot of our customers are starting to say, you know what, if I've got an RFI or I've got a submittal or a punch, if you're going to ask me a question, put it in the commenting on the item. And that really makes it easier to go back and see what's happened. And it gives you an important history as well, so that you can determine the next steps. So this is something that I think, regardless of what technology you have, you can start to make some impact here with Microsoft, Autodesk, Procore, whatever technology your company is using today. Next one, Aaron. Documents is also a big one. If you're uploading your documents digitally, which most of us are, I think that's a great first step. But there's a lot of tools out there that can help take things to the next level. I think at a base, having a good system of organization that aligns with standards and providing the necessary people with access to these is critical. But there's also a lot you can do with, better managing your document revisions, especially by creating folder structures with specific permissions that, take the load off of you to make sure that the right people have access at the right time. There's also, the ability to tag documents. If you start tagging and labeling, I think there's a lot coming in the future with auto tagging, auto metadata, things that are really going to smooth your workflows. So if this is not something that, you've started doing today, there's a lot of document solutions out there. And I think this is one of the biggest first steps, especially in construction. Everything goes back to the drawings, the documents, the plans, right? This is a kind of a critical foundation for most everything that's happening later on. And then the last piece in where we see a lot of construction companies investing their time is really streamlining and standardizing existing workflows. This goes back to what I said earlier about finding a process that you see to be problematic and figure out the new process and figure out how workflows can help you do that better. It can be anything from a simple checklist to a form-based process, right? So this is something we have a lot of inside of Procore for specific repeatable actions. You can basically create different templates, and these templates have the required information that you need to fill out to complete a certain issue, task, or job. And by standardizing the process, it makes it a whole lot easier to make it repeatable and drive better results. And then the last piece is really automating workflows. If you're a Microsoft customer, you've probably got access to Power Automate. We have this within Procore as well. When you determine these best practices, you can bring together the form and the checklist, and you can actually put it into a workflow that essentially runs itself for you, right? It automatically follows up with certain people. This is especially valuable for approval workflows, which is probably where some of you are already leveraging this today. Next slide, Aaron. I want to just talk about a quick example of something I was talking with our internal teams the other day. It's an example of punch, and I think it's a good it's a good example of how to kind of roll out technology the right way. So it brings together the technology and the culture. And if I can, I'll actually attach a link to the webinar. It's a Procore webinar, but it's really generic advice for anyone. And I thought it was very, very well done by one of our internal team members. But, let's take Punch for an example. What is the opportunity with Punch? Well, a lot of times, it's a complex and collaborative process where you get rework at the end of a project. And this is a problem for a lot of companies because at the end of the project, if this drags on too long, it can really cause delays. It can upset the owner. So, we've had teams try to improve communication and reduce rework by getting to like a net zero punch or more, in this case, no repeat punch issues. So this is where, this is a problem on the site. Technology can come in and help you. This is just an example of our app, but you could really use many different mechanisms to kind of digitize and track punch items. And in this case, what technology can help you do is it can help you go from reactive to proactive and get better at your quality management. So, really identifying and closing out more problems up front. So this is what I really wanted to share. This is an example of really rolling out kind of a new process, a new technology process at a company. So this is a checklist that one of my colleagues developed and has shared out. And I share this because, if you're trying to move something like punch items from paper or ad hoc management into a digital tool, it takes a lot of effort to do this. And you can see from this checklist how much thought has gone into rolling out this new punch process. Before the first item is created, before the first item is sent to the assignee, and before the item is closed. And my colleague does kind of a simulation of actually talking to different stakeholders and getting them ready for this process. And simple things like, do you have access to the new technology? Can you open it? Can you find the item? Does it have the proper fields for you? Do you feel like you're ready to get started on this? It takes a lot of time and energy. And I just thought this was a great example of the effort that goes into that. So, Aaron, if you want to go back to those last two and just chat about these quick.
Yeah, this is just one other method that we see every time we visit a job site. This is the 4-week look ahead schedule. You probably have these on your job sites, and these are really important physical boards that are tools for collaboration because they allow the project coordinators to plot the work streams for the next couple weeks. And they're able to easily adjust and move things around. And this is an example of one that's a magnetic board. And so they could easily, magnetize everything onto it. And it really helps them wrestle with the schedule and really kind of think through every step of the detailed, process and who's going to be on which work streams. And this is where they could bring in their subcontractors and get them on the same page and educate them on, where their process of work fits into the broader schedule. But the real problem is you have to be physically present in the room to be able to see this. And so, a simple process that a lot of other, like in technology within project management, one thing that we use is a Kanban board. And a Kanban board is a really great digital solution to be able to plot multiple tasks and activities into like the similar column format. And it's a different method of tracking progress and planning, but we've seen some customers take the 4-week look ahead schedule and then digitize it into a Kanban board. And then what's great about that is it allows everyone to have visibility into the look ahead schedule. And you can also assign action items to individuals, which will notify them. And it also allows everyone to adjust the schedule and contribute to it. There's obviously pros and cons to this approach as well, but this is just one other idea to be able to capture what's happening in the field and digitize it in a way that everyone can see it.
Regardless of what, you can skip this slide, given
Okay.
time. I think regardless of what technology you have access to, what products you have access to from the technology side, there are improvements that you can start making and processes that you can start tackling, regardless of whether you've got Microsoft, Autodesk, Oracle, Procore, whatever it might be.
So when we think about enhancing project intelligence and agility, you could think of these categories of real-time decision-making, predictive problem solving, personalized project management, streamlined communications, automating administrative tasks, and integrated workflows. And I won't get into all of these, but one thing that at Procore, we're building a much better document management process that is powered by AI, and the AI allows us to be able to automate some of the tagging and the naming so that everything is matching the right compliance, and this document management, document control is so important to just being able to make sure that revisions are managed properly, everyone's on the right version of the documents, and also all the right data is accurate. And so we're seeing more and more machine learning being applied to understand and interpret drawings in particular. And these are just a bunch of categories of technology that allow you to digitize the job site and just to allow you to have access to more data to be able to make informed decisions. So whether it's leveraging the BIM model or it's using different capture methods, there's amazing new technologies that are emerging that some of the more common obvious ones, which are like cameras on the job site. I encourage everyone to have cameras on their job site, whether it's through companies like EarthCam or even just other homegrown solutions. Make sure that you have visibility into the field and you're able to see what's going on. You need more transparency and tracking of the job site so that you can look back and be able to see what happened when. There's also some interesting technology around 360 capture. Yesterday, I was on a job site here in Austin. Behind me, Ryan Companies has a building going up here in Austin, and they actually use this Boston Dynamics robot to be able to walk the job site and take photos every single day. And what's amazing about this process is the dog is able to take photos in the exact same spots every single day so they could compare, before and after photos. And then they're able to use that with another AI software to analyze all of the images and identify issues. And so this is just a tracking method that allows them to streamline their digital process. This is another progressive technology by a company called Purview 3D, which is a technology for scanning as-built environments or even during the course of construction to be able to create a highly accurate 3D virtual scan of and this is really important with like complicated equipment, to be able to analyze and study every aspect of the construction. And then I want to spend some time talking about Microsoft Copilot, because I think this is actually going to be the area that touches all of us, because Microsoft is in the process of rolling out their AI Copilot into every single one of their tools. And you could think of it like a virtual assistant that's going to complement your job. So you can basically just use natural language to be able to tell it what to do. So this is an example of an Excel being able to take a table and quickly tell it to collate columns and understand projections and graph the data. So processes that used to take many manual steps, you can now tell the AI to do those steps. And email is also going to be a really important area where you're just going to be able to draft emails that are following the right formats and using the right tone and being able to communicate more effectively with the aid of AI. And this is just a teaser video that Microsoft released that shows you a glimpse of this in action.
This is a pretty exciting vision for where things are going and where, as folks who work with technology, where our worlds could end up in not even 5 years, in 2 years, right?
Yeah, they're actually in the middle of rolling this out right now, and companies can sign up for their enterprise plan. And so yeah, we're just going to start to see this become more and more interwoven into every tool that we use. So but I think one thing that's important on the topic of AI is that we all need to be still in control of the final decisions that need to be made. And really, these are just all these technologies are just different ways of processing data and helping us do better at our own jobs and make more informed decisions. So regardless of the technology, it still comes back to the role of culture. And just recapping some of the things that Kristen mentioned around empowering decision-making in your people, thinking about modern ways of building that culture into your company, and also fostering cross-disciplinary learning. So, thinking of mentorship programs and ways that people can learn from one another to continue to progress themselves and just be model examples for each other. And also just breeding a culture of collaboration and transparency, and also just one thing to mention is the importance of diversity in teams, diversity in perspectives, diversity in backgrounds, diversity in skills, to be able to come to the table, and which often drives to better results and better outcomes when you have a variety of perspectives and backgrounds. And also rewarding collaborative success. So thinking of ways to incorporate reinforcement learning into your company. I think that we covered a lot of topics, obviously everything around collaboration. So we can definitely open it up for any questions that you might have.
I wanted to say thank you for that incredibly rich presentation. You covered a lot. And one of the things that strikes me about technology is that it creates the opportunity for us to become organized in our industry in ways that perhaps we aren't always as organized as we could be. Because you have to think through the process and how you, in thinking through that process in order to put it into some kind of standardized form, I think that benefits us, and because we don't always think in that organized way when we're communicating and when we're doing things. So it creates a wonderful opportunity to improve the industry just through the process of transforming to digital records.
Add to that a little bit, Nancy. I think in our organization, we've gone through a lot of these different things over the last, 20 years. But one of the things that we realized too is the technology can help to be the lever that drives the behavior. So when you have, and all of the cultural things that Aaron and Kristen shared are hugely important in getting the organizations to understand what you're trying to accomplish and the whys and the benefits and whatnot. But there have been times where we've used the technology, maybe not as the hammer, but as the rubber mallet, because there's positivity of what can come out the other side, but there's also like, whoa, geez, that's how the program works. So this is how we're going to have to change our process. So, we have put that little spin on it, and it has helped us get some things implemented when they can see the benefits of what can come out the other side. And okay, so there's a little bit of pain in changing what you do, but here's what you get. And it's because of how the technology works, and you can kind of fluff it off that way a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's different tactics you take, right? There's always, I think people themselves are at different levels of wanting to adopt. There are people who are eager, there are people who are resistant. And so I think, oftentimes in technology, even as we're building new software products, we think about, well, how do we start with our early, there's an early adopter group, there's companies and people who are really eager to adopt that technology. And while we want to serve everyone, we're going to start with the people who are eager, and we're going to get the best practices together with them. And then the technology is going to help bring the other people along as we find out what works best. So I completely agree with that, Dawn. And, and Nancy, I love your comment about getting organized, right? Because that's it does, when you put things into a process, it forces you to look at what you're doing today and say, how are we going to do this better? And you carry those best practices across different teams and you scale them in a way that you wouldn't have before. So
yeah, and Don, you mentioned the technology can how did you say it, be the hammer, or be the kind of the forcing,
the rubber mallet, if not a hammer, it's kind of like a rubber mallet.
Yeah.
Not quite as, but
what that made me think of is we see a lot of our customers, spending a lot of time, their admins spending a lot of time creating form templates and creating workflows, and then telling everyone, you, for this process, use this form template. It's already set up and ready for you. And, by using that common template, it forces everyone to follow a standard process of implementing or inputting data. And it just becomes a common method instead of each person having their own way of tracking and documenting.
it's sort of applicable to life now. I have 2 young kids and they do a ton of sports, and so my husband and I are always kind of juggling, like, well, who's writing this, who's tracking this, and who's writing it down, and where are you writing it down so that I know about it, and even at a small level in our personal lives, I'm like, gosh, we have to streamline our workflow here, because we forgot to take my son to math club last week. He was upset about that. So it really, this presentation too even applies to life a little bit. So
that's so true.
I'm waiting for the AI that I can just talk to and then tell it what I need, and it will just put everything where it belongs. So I don't even have to think about templates and forms.
yeah.
How far are we away from that?
I'm waiting for something to read all the school emails and just
Oh,
tell
yeah.
me what I need to respond to.
Well, actually, with Microsoft Teams has already demonstrated the ability to, you can imagine having like a conversation with someone about an issue, and you can just say like / Copilot, create an RFI out of this issue. And it will literally create a form in Microsoft Teams and autofill, 95% of the data. And then you review it, modify it, and then hit submit or save. And I think that's going to be the future of being able to capture whatever data is in front of you and summarize it, or create an object out of it.
One of the issues that I always hear from people about whatever process or whatever software they select is that they're working with people who are using other software and other processes. So what is the future of that integration of data across platforms?
Yeah, that's a top challenge that we hear as well, especially from our general contractor customers who are working on a digital platform and trying to get their subcontractor partners and architect partners to engage. And I think, the ideal state is that, everyone is on a single platform. But we know that that's not necessarily the reality. So one thing that I can say that at least we're thinking about is everyone has email, right? Everyone's in email, everyone's responding to email. And I think there needs to be a way where, regardless of what core technology you are sitting in, you can reach out to other stakeholders in the digital email platform or messaging or communication platform they're in, to make it easy for them to engage with you and participate, and maybe take action right from the email, right? So if I'm working in, if you're working in Microsoft and I'm working in Procore, or you're working in Autodesk or whatever it is, and you're an architect and I need your help to reply, why can't I send you an email with all the context you need so that you can just reply straight from that email, as if you were in the other platform, but you're really not. So that's one step where I see at least us doing some work there, but it does continue to be an ongoing challenge for sure.
Do we have any other questions that people would like to raise?
So Nancy, it's Pam Deegan. I just have
Hi,
one
Pam.
quickie question. How are you? Thanks, Aaron and Kristen. Great job, great performance of pulling this all together. Hey, I think it applies to Aaron. It's more not about the process and stuff, but I think you had mentioned the percent increase of design build versus the percent increase of IPD. And I was just curious if those statistics that you had were regional or were they national statistics? I was just kind of curious.
I have a sense that it's US.
Okay.
It's probably US. I'd have to look, at least that was my assumption. I'd have to look back at the detailed study, and it's consistent with, what we see. I think a lot of companies, IPD, it has to really be driven by the owner, and it's maybe not as accessible, but we certainly internally see that shift over more to design build, at least as a.
Yeah, the design build, definitely, I would say. I think there's still some resistance on behalf of some firms, maybe mine, but to do the IPD just because of its contractual.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I will say this, I think probably Aaron, it was your side that I agree with you, kind of that idea of how do they work together, the teams and that communication process. And I thought it was interesting because you used the word criticize, and I think I probably would pick a different word, only because the whole idea of trying to get them to communicate and stay, be collaborative, as you both said. I think that's, I almost would have said critique, but even that would have been somewhat, finger pointing. And I agree with you, the whole idea of kind of this documentation of what's going on the project, because I think there's something to be said about that, particularly with subcontractors that English is not their first language. We really push for them to try to do things, in that kind of process, as you said, Kristen, whether it be by email or something, just so that we can basically confirm that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So
You know,
But,
there's also things out there along those lines of just message translation and a lot
Right.
of, you know, a lot of platforms now and whatever messaging app you're in have some translation capability as well. You know, there's a lot of Spanish speakers, especially in the US. And so, yeah, for project announcements and stuff, making sure that you can communicate that across effectively. Digital helps you. It's an aid, right? Because if you don't
I
all
know.
speak that language, it can help you get that message out. So
Yeah, even confirming the punch list, as you said, I think that's a,
Yep.
great point. So thank you. This was great.
thank you.